So think about this for a second. If you are like an A-list actress in Hollywood today, you might actually willingly cut your salary in half.
Well, absolutely. People do it all the time for the right director.
Right, yeah. You might even turn down other major starring roles just to secure a part in a Christopher Nolan film. I mean, the prestige of his projects is just undeniable.
Yeah, it's a massive career milestone for anyone.
Exactly. But historically speaking, when you sign that contract, it basically gives your character about a 90% chance of ending up dead, or, driven completely insane, or just existing as a literal figment of a man's imagination.
Which is wild when you lay it all out like that.
It really is. So welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, we are undertaking a massive pattern-seeking exploration of one of the most celebrated blockbuster architects of our time.
Yeah, we're really getting into the weeds on this one.
We are. Because when you lay his masterpieces out side by side, you start noticing this huge structural anomaly. Basically, being a female character in this cinematic universe is essentially a walking tragedy. And our mission today is to look at the blueprints and figure out why.
Right, and what's fascinating here is that we aren't just talking about a simple, surface-level critique of women dying on screen.
Because characters die in movies all the time.
Exactly, yeah, they do. What we were really examining today is narrative architecture. It's about screenwriting mechanics.
Okay, so like how the story is actually built.
Right, it's an exploration of how a masterful writer and director utilizes these female characters, not as independent flesh and blood human beings with their own internal lives, but as structural stepping stones. Stepping stones meant entirely to support the male protagonists.
Okay, let's unpack this, because on one level, we are talking about a male writer-director who naturally writes male-centric universes. That makes logical sense.
Sure, yeah. Write what you know.
Right. But when you look at the women in these films, they operate more like tools than people. They are symbols designed to help you, the audience, understand the male lead's trauma or his motivation.
Yeah, they have a very specific utility.
I was actually thinking about how this functions in a script, and it's almost like these characters are expensive life insurance policies.
Oh, I like that. That analogy actually gets right to the heart of the narrative economy at play here.
Yeah, because think about how a life insurance policy works. It is functionally useless to the people around it while the person is alive.
Right, it's just a piece of paper.
Exactly, just sitting there in a drawer in the background. It only gains actual tangible value, and in the case of these films, narrative value to the plot once the person dies.
The payout.
Yes. The cinematic payoff, the emotional weight of the story, only gets cashed in through their death.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this kind of structural shortcut actually relies on a very old, very established literary tradition. I mean, it goes way back.
Like how far back?
Well, Edgar Allan Poe famously wrote an essay where he claimed that the death of a beautiful woman is unquestionably the most poetical topic in the world.
Wow. Okay, so that's a heavily ingrained trope.
Super ingrained. Now, in modern screenwriting, that concept has evolved into this highly effective but deeply reductive mechanical tool.
Especially for a director who is trying to do a lot at once.
Exactly. When a director has 2.5 hours to establish a complex, mind-bending world, which is completely Nolan's signature, they don't always want to spend 45 minutes building a nuanced, shared emotional arc between two equals.
Right, because it just takes too much screen time. You have to explain the time travel or the dream logic instead.
Exactly, yeah. Takes way too much time. So they take a shortcut.
They take the ultimate shortcut.
Right. The grief caused by the sudden, tragic loss of a beautiful woman provides this instant emotional engine for the male hero.
It requires almost zero setup.
None at all. But it grants the protagonist instant depth, instant tragedy, and an unshakable motive that the audience just implicitly understands. He relies heavily on this classic trope as the ignition switch for his male-driven plots.
So if that death is just an easy shortcut to give the male lead an emotional engine, how does it actually manifest on screen? Because when you really look for it, this ignition switch is everywhere.
Oh, it really is.
Take his very first feature film, Following. The male hero literally goes to prison because he is framed for the death of the only woman in the entire story.
Right. Her death is the trap that springs the entire plot.
Yeah. And notice how that mechanic carries directly into his breakout hit, Memento.
Oh, absolutely. The chronological trick of Memento is so brilliant that it kind of masks the underlying hollowness of the central relationship.
Because the entire driving force of the narrative is Leonard searching for the man who assaulted and murdered his wife.
But she's not even a real person to us. We never actually meet her.
Right, we meet a memory.
Yes. And more importantly, we only meet Leonard's highly subjective, completely idealized memory of her. We, as the audience, have absolutely no idea who this woman was outside of her husband's grief.
Did she have a career? Friends? Was she funny? Was she difficult? We have no clue.
The film doesn't require her to have an identity. Her sole narrative function is that her violent end starts the engine of the movie and her memory sustains its momentum.
It's crazy when you realize that, and you see the exact same thing when the budgets get bigger. Let's look at The Prestige.
The Prestige is a great example.
You actually get a 2-for-1 deal when it comes to this trope. First, you have Christian Bale's character, Borden, whose wife is driven completely insane by his secret.
The secret that he's actually twins sharing one life.
Right, and she ends her own life, and the script uses her suicide purely to showcase the devastating collateral damage of the rivalry between the two male magicians.
Right, her tragedy isn't explored for her own sake at all. It's a mirror held up to reflect Borden's obsession.
And then consider Scarlett Johansson's character in that same film.
Yeah, another perfect example. She doesn't have her own complex internal life or independent ambitions that the film cares to explore.
She functions primarily as a symbol of temptation, right? Just a shiny object tossed back and forth.
Exactly, used by the men to betray and hurt one another. Which brings us to arguably the ultimate example of the collateral damage character.
Rachel Dawes in the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yes. From a pure screenwriting perspective, she exists almost entirely to serve as Bruce Wayne's moral compass.
She is the idealized representation of a corruption-free Gotham.
Right. So when the writer needs Bruce and Harvey Dent to hit absolute rock bottom, how do they do it?
They blow up the moral compass?
They literally blow her up. Rachel's death is the explosive device used to break Bruce's spirit and push Harvey over the edge into becoming Two-Face.
And her actual life, her dangerous career as a prosecutor taking on the mob, it all just vanishes into the ether so the men can have their dark nights of the soul.
And look at how that trilogy concludes with Talia al Ghul. After the grand reveal that she is the mastermind, she suffers this notoriously awkward, abrupt death simply because the mechanics of the plot require the villain to be eliminated.
Right, so the male hero's arc can neatly resolve.
Exactly. Even Catwoman, who is portrayed as incredibly capable and fierce, ultimately functions as a narrative bridge.
Yeah, her primary structural purpose by the end of the film is to provide Batman with a physical escape from Gotham. She becomes the vehicle for his happy ending. So, okay, if death is this highly efficient shortcut to motivate the hero, what happens when a director actually has to keep the women alive on screen?
Yeah, it is a great question.
Like, what happens when they are physically present, breathing, and living in the story? Does he give them their own independent engines?
The pattern evolves a bit, but the underlying issue of agency remains identical. When female characters are physically present in these films, they are frequently trapped inside a subjective prison.
A subjective prison. I like that phrasing.
Yeah, they are confined entirely to the male character's point of view, often literally serving as projections of his own mind.
Inception.
Yeah.
You're definitely talking about Inception.
I'm absolutely talking about Inception. Let's look at the mechanics of Mal, played by Marion Cotillard.
Okay, let's do it.
For the vast majority of that film's runtime, she is introduced and framed as an unrelenting villain.
Yeah, she is this chaotic, malicious force constantly sabotaging Cobb's carefully laid plans.
Violently attacking his team, actively trying to prevent him from returning to his children.
She is a literal nightmare.
But the psychological crux of the script is that this entity isn't the real Mal. This character is purely a projection of Cobb's own festering guilt.
Because he implanted the idea in her head.
Exactly. Cobb even explicitly admits that he cannot truly imagine her in all her real-world complexity, with all her actual flaws and beauty.
So the film spends nearly 2.5 hours exploring a man's deep-seated guilt over his wife, while the actual woman who lived, breathed, and tragically died is completely erased by the narrative.
She is replaced by a phantom whose only discernible personality trait is a desire to ruin the man's life.
It's like she's just a mirror reflecting his self-hatred back at him. And you see the exact same mechanic utilized in Oppenheimer, too.
Oh, 100%.
Florence Pugh plays Jean Tatlock. Now, historically speaking, Jean Tatlock was a formidable, deeply complex woman.
Yes, she was.
She had her own intense political ideologies, a career in psychiatry, and profound personal struggles. But how does the script actually utilize her?
She's reduced to a visual metaphor for his conscience.
Yes, She appears briefly, very often completely undressed, and exists strictly within Oppenheimer's memories and surreal visions.
Purely to highlight his internal guilt.
Right. The film entirely strips her of her historical agency and complexity. She doesn't get to be a brilliant psychiatrist. She gets to be the naked embodiment of a man's regret during a security clearance hearing.
Which brings us to an incredible contrast in narrative framing. Because if you really want to understand what a writer truly reveres, you look at who gets to carry the emotional weight of the world on their shoulders.
Here's where it gets really interesting, folks. Let's talk about the parenting double standard. Look at how this cinematic universe treats fathers versus how it treats mothers.
The divergence is stark. I mean, there is an absolute obsession with fatherhood in these films.
Yeah, the filmography is packed to the brim with wise, guiding father figures.
Think of Michael Caine's recurring presence.
Oh, yeah.
He has essentially become the quintessential archetype of the father figure in this universe. He's the wise elder who nurtures the hero, provides the moral framework, and guides the protagonist toward success.
And the fathers are always the ones making these impossible, agonizing, galaxy-spanning sacrifices for their children.
They are the emotional anchors of the narrative.
But the mothers are either ghosts or they are active liabilities.
Let's break down Tenet. You have Kat, played by Elizabeth Debicki. She is presented for most of the film as a masochistic victim, enduring severe psychological and physical abuse from her villainous husband.
And she is a mother, and her fierce love for her son is stated as her sole motivation for enduring all of this.
But her motherhood isn't explored as a rich, emotional theme from her own perspective. Instead, it is a biological lever on a chessboard.
Man, that's dark but true. Both the male hero and the male villain basically use her love for her son to control her, manipulate her, and move her into position for their spy games.
Her motherhood is just a plot device, not a personality trait.
And even in Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt gives this ferociously strong, captivating performance as Kitty Oppenheimer.
She is incredible in that role.
She has that incredible scene during the interrogation where she just verbally destroys the lawyer. But structurally, she is strictly a reactionary force.
Yeah, she is drinking, she is frustrated, she is angry, but it is all in reaction to his choices.
Right, his career, his infidelities, his genius. We learn virtually nothing about her own ambitions before him or her own internal views on her motherhood, which the film clearly suggests is troubled, but never bothers to explore from her point of view.
You see this dynamic most glaringly in the grand emotional epics like Interstellar and Inception.
Oh, absolutely.
Both of these massive blockbuster films are fundamentally about fathers desperately, agonizingly trying to traverse the bounds of time, space, and dreams just to get back to their children.
That is the undeniable emotional core of both movies.
While the mothers are nowhere to be found.
Right. In Inception, the mother is a lethal obstacle, this mental projection actively trying to prevent the father from reuniting with his kids.
And in Interstellar, the mother is a blank space. She passed away before the events of the film begin, vaguely mentioned in a single-line backstory.
So, these films spend 3 hours dissecting the profound emotional toll of fatherhood, while motherhood is treated as either a villainous threat or a narrative inconvenience.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there. I have to push back on this a little bit because I know what you, the listener, are thinking right now.
Okay, lay it on me.
What about Murph in Interstellar? We can't just ignore her. She isn't a dead wife, she isn't a projection, and she isn't a reactionary housewife.
That's true, she's not.
She is a brilliant astrophysicist who solves the gravity equation and literally saves the entire human race from extinction. You cannot tell me she's just a stepping stone for the male lead.
So she is actually the ultimate test case for this theory. She achieves the greatest possible triumph a character can achieve. But we have to look at the concept of narrative gravity and what I like to call the scaffolding effect.
The scaffolding effect. Okay, what's that?
Think about scaffolding on a construction site.
Okay.
It is absolutely essential, right? You cannot build a towering structure without it. It has a crucial function.
But once the building is complete, what happens?
You tear it down.
You tear it down and discard it because the building was never about the scaffolding.
Wow, okay.
Even the most capable, brilliant women in these films suffer from this narrative gravity. No matter how far they launch into their own independent trajectory, the script inevitably pulls them right back into the male protagonist's orbit to serve as his scaffolding.
Okay, so apply that to Murph. She saves humanity. How is she scaffolding?
Because of where the camera places its emotional focus. The true emotional climax of Interstellar, the moment the music swells, the tears flow, and the thematic core of the film is realized, is not Murph's incredible civilization-saving scientific breakthrough in the facility.
Okay, that's a good point.
It is the moment she, as an elderly woman on her deathbed, finally reunites with her young father.
Oh, man.
Her entire life's journey, her unparalleled genius, her salvation of humanity. It is framed by the script entirely through the lens of missing him. Her monumental achievement is ultimately presented as a monument to his absence.
Wow, when you put it like that. Her saving the world really is framed as a byproduct of her daddy issues.
The film values her towering intellect only insofar as it validates and deepens her emotional connection to the male lead. And if you want to see how this scaffolding effect works in a thriller, look at Natalie in Memento.
See, Natalie is another one who seems entirely independent at first glance.
Right.
She is manipulative, she is selfish, she is running her own incredibly complicated life, she's dealing with the visceral grief of her own lost lover, and she brilliantly uses Leonard, our amnesiac hero, to eliminate a thug who is threatening her.
Exactly. For the middle section of that movie, she is totally pulling the strings.
Yeah.
She is a fantastic, complex character on paper. She has distinct goals, her own trauma, and a ruthlessness that is completely separate from the hero's journey.
Right.
But what is her actual structural purpose in the script? Her purpose is to demonstrate to the audience exactly how easily an amnesiac hero can be exploited and manipulated by the world around him.
She's basically a tutorial for the audience.
Exactly. And once she serves that purpose, what happens to her?
She just vanishes.
She completely vanishes from the narrative consciousness of the movie. Her independent storyline, her trauma over her lost lover, her survival in a dangerous criminal underworld, the film drops it entirely.
Because Leonard's immediate arc has moved on.
Right. The movie doesn't care what happens to her next. The scaffolding has served its purpose in building his paranoia, so it is abruptly dismantled and left in the margins.
It's the exact same mechanic with Ariadne in Inception, played by Elliot Page.
Well, perfect example.
Because Ariadne is supposed to be this once-in-a-generation brilliant architect who builds these mind-bending dream worlds.
Right.
But functionally, within the mechanics of the script, what does she actually do? She operates purely as a therapist for Cobb and an exposition machine for the audience.
Precisely. She exists to ask the specific questions you, the viewer, need answered about the complicated rules of the dream world.
And when she isn't explaining the rules, she is constantly prying into Cobb's emotional state so he can process his trauma out loud.
Yeah. She doesn't have her own dreams to protect, her own desires to fulfill, or any real personal stakes in whether this corporate heist succeeds or fails.
She is brilliant, yes, but her brilliance is deployed exclusively to service the male lead's psychological journey.
Even if you go way back to Insomnia, you see the seeds of this. Hilary Swank plays this highly competent, idealistic young detective.
And she actually survives the film, which, as we established, is a statistical rarity.
It really is. She is smart. She does the actual police work. She pieces the clues together. But ultimately, she isn't the center of her own detective story.
She serves as a pawn in this massive, heavy psychological tug-of-war between the corrupted characters played by Al Pacino and Robin Williams.
Exactly. The story is fundamentally about their decaying moral compasses. She is just the pristine instrument they use to test each other.
So when we synthesize all of these examples, from the dead wives to the guilt projections, from the exposition therapist to the brilliant daughters, what are we actually observing about the architecture of these scripts?
Right, because it is vital to clarify. The criticism here is absolutely not that this director can't write women.
No, clearly he can. As you said, he creates the outlines of incredibly compelling, intelligent women.
Exactly. And his more recent films have undeniably shown slight improvements in giving female characters more dialogue, more screen time, and more physical presence.
Right.
The critique we are making is about a consistent, perhaps deeply unconscious structural choice to prioritize the male perspective above all else. He builds these magnificent, awe-inspiring, complex puzzle boxes of films. But the mechanics of the puzzle consistently force the audience to only understand the female characters through the men whose stories they inhabit.
The women are the scaffolding. The men are the buildings.
It's a choice of framing and narrative economy. It's not that the female characters do nothing on screen. It's that the script fundamentally doesn't value what they do unless it directly catalyzes a change in the man.
So what does this all mean? We are talking about one of the most successful, most influential storytellers of the 21st century.
Yeah, these aren't just indie films watched by a few film students.
No, they are massive cultural touchstones. Millions of people watch them, dissect them, revere them, and model their own storytelling after them. And when we consume media on that massive of a scale, we are being quietly trained by the architecture of the stories.
Yes, exactly. Train.
We're being trained to view certain characters, usually the male protagonists, as entire self-contained universes. They are full of complexity, deserving of our endless empathy, our patience, and our deep psychological analysis.
And simultaneously.
Simultaneously, we are being trained to view other characters, the women, as mere planets, whose only real narrative purpose is to orbit that male universe, to provide emotional support, or to occasionally crash into it to create some dramatic fireworks for the hero to overcome.
This raises an important question, and it's something really crucial for you to consider when we analyze the media we love. If one of our greatest modern storytellers, an absolute master of cinematic craft, consistently utilizes female trauma, female intellect, and female existence merely as a catalyst for male enlightenment, how does that subtle, repeated conditioning affect us?
Yeah.
How does it shape the way we expect to see women's stories told and valued, not just on a movie screen, but in our real lives? If we are conditioned by our most prestigious art to only care about a woman's pain or triumph when a man is profoundly affected by it, that narrative framing inevitably bleeds into our reality.
That is a heavy but deeply necessary thought to sit with. The blueprint of a blockbuster might be structurally sound for delivering a thrilling, mind-bending plot, but the narrative shortcuts being used are carrying a lot of unexamined weight.
Very much so.
We started this deep dive by talking about looking past the spectacle to see the structural anomalies in these cinematic masterpieces. I think it's safe to say we found the hidden mechanics in the foundation. It makes you look at that towering filmography completely differently.
You don't just see the dazzling puzzle box anymore.
No, you see the scaffolding that had to be torn down to make it stand. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the blueprints, keep looking for the missing pieces, and we will catch you next time.